Dr. Jazz.
So where are you? You're in Chicago, right?
Dr.
Yeah.
Jazz.
Ah, yeah. Uh, I just wanted to start this talk first by, I have so many albums by you as a leader and as a sideman, but I don't know, maybe I'm really behind, but like the last one I have is Trio Correspondence. What's
Yeah, it's a little. I'm
what's been
holding.
going on
No, I have some. I have a bit of a lag happening. I have about 3 in the can. I'm running a bit behind, but it's coming. There's things coming.
What's coming out? What's the news
I have a
you can share
record.
already?
Yeah. Well, I have to. It's more about like finishing like mixes and getting things done. I have a record with Darius Jones, Michael Vatcher, and Jason Rebke.
Wow, beautiful.
We played the Chicago Jazz Festival, recorded, and that will get done. And then I have a record with Rebke and Sven-Åke Johansson that was recorded maybe a couple years ago. That's also kind of in the pipeline, and I have some other things I'm working on too.
Oh, fantastic, super, great. Looking forward to these. Yeah, I was like, I don't know what's happening, what's going on there, but
Yeah, no, I know. There's been a bit of a slowdown. This is true.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about your connection with Paul Lytton, and I mean with Jason. Obviously, you've played for a really long time and have a. But how did you connect with Paul and him being like one of the main guys of the European free jazz scene?
No, I mean he's amazing. Well, what happened was there was a tour that was booked that was supposed to happen from the Dance and a Hop record. I think we got booked for the Cheltenham Festival in outside of London or wherever Cheltenham, I can't remember.
Yeah, Cheltenham. Yeah.
Well, anyway, but Frank couldn't do it all of a sudden. He had this, he had a thing, and so I was just like, I once saw Paul. I think the first time I was in Berlin, he filled in for Paul Lytton, filled in for Paul Nelson Love with The Thing. And it was like one of the greatest, like, it was like this amazing time playing. And I thought of him, and I had met him a couple times before. We played once on his improvised series in Aachen. And then, so I just wrote him, and I was like, I wondered if he would fill in for Frank. And so he did basically a tour first playing these tunes from Dance and Hop, and it was like completely amazing.
Wow.
We did, I don't know, maybe we did like 7 dates, and then we did another tour with Jason. It was amazing. He's what can you say? It's Paul Lytton,
Yeah. No, it's beautiful what he contributes to your music. It's such a nice connection. Him and Jason are beautiful together.
They're really, it's truly feels like free playing.
Yeah, exactly. How did you, I mean, like Paul is like, one generation before you, obviously, and but what got you excited for this music, and first of all for this instrument that you play, and then the second question, like for improvisation and jazz, I mean, did you have like a specific aha moment, or
why? What you mean, like why Paul and
no,
this?
no, I mean, like why did you start playing the cornet, and your jazz moment, if you
like
have
like jazz history. Well, yeah, it is. I actually think it is kind of interesting. I was in art school right out of high school, and I moved into a public housing for students where it was like there were students this was in Chicago, and it was students from Roosevelt University, the Art Institute of Chicago, Columbia, a bunch of schools around, close by. And on my floor was Weasel Walter.
Okay.
Like lived basically across the way from me. And I had never played an instrument other than I knew how to play some campfire chords, on guitar. And but I'd loved jazz. I'd kind of discovered jazz in high school. I had had a high school teacher who really loved the music, and I had a friend, like a dear friend, who had some records, and it became really important to me listening wise. So Weasel was like, he was who he is today, basically just as an 18-year-old. And so he basically said he was starting a band of non-musicians, and he encouraged like everyone kind of on the floor. So my next door neighbor was someone who became kind of important in his world. I mean, as a friend, Bill Pizzeri, who was in the Flying Lutenbachers later. And I was like, I'd always wanted to play the trumpet, but never had really, just had not tried really. So, but as soon as I tried, it was interesting. It was like the whole band, he kind of started this band, and after a while, kind of everyone dropped out, but it was like he and I playing every day. And then I dropped out of art school and kind of started this odyssey of like becoming, I mean, you can imagine. So like going from 0, 19
Wow.
to, you don't know how to play a scale to, becoming a trumpet player of some kind. And so it was really Weasel's. I mean, I loved jazz, but it was really like hearing the birth of free jazz. He had an amazing record collection when we were kids. So, I mean, I think the first thing I heard was, he played, he had that Circle with a Hole in the Middle, that compilation of outtakes of Ornette Coleman Quartet. And I just, I mean, I'm listening to that record 800 times, that first year, so that kind of thing. And so that was kind of the beginning of it.
Wow. Did you then learn by ear, or transcribe solos, or take lessons as
Oh my
well?
gosh. I mean, I don't want to completely bore you with the odyssey of what it's like to become an adult.
Because I'm self-taught in a way as well. So.
No, but I'll tell you, I mean, no, so look, I mean, the first piece was like, the first piece was, I think, just improvising and loving to improvise. And then you listen to music and you're like, oh, wait, you can't, the trumpet is a weird instrument. You can't just, the note isn't there. It's not a guitar. It's not a piano, so it's like, I would listen to a record and try to play it. And then I mean, no idea what transcription was, no idea what time signatures was, no idea, just nothing, zero music, training. And so, I was lucky, there were a lot of different things happening around. Weasel got me involved in, there was a place here called South End Music Works, which is like it was a meeting place for the North Side free jazz world of Chicago and the AACM. And so like I saw that year, that first year, I saw this amazing array of people. I mean, I saw Fred Anderson for the first time, Douglas Ewart, Lester Bowie, Ray Anderson, Hal Russell, I met Mars Williams, Brian Sam, all of those guys, just just an amazing constellation of people. And at the same time, you're like trying to figure out what a C scale is, so I think, so wow. I remember the first time I met Lester Bowie, I had kind of spent the whole day, I think, before playing, and my lips were so, I was really stiff. So I was like in the coat, I was guarding the coats and instruments of musicians, and I was kind of blowing my lips out, and he walks in the room, and I'm like, he's like, you can't let people catch you doing that shit. He was great. He was really funny. And but I would say, and I also, importantly, I think that same week I met Paul Smoker, who is this.
Paul is
amazing. Played, amazing. And so it was literally, I think within a month, I saw Lester Bowie and Paul Smoker, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And Paul was like, well, if that's what you want to do, there's a lot of things to do. And I kind of, I mean, it's like a dazzling amount. A lot of things had to happen. So I luckily met a great trumpet player in Chicago, Brad Good, who actually gave me my first instrument, first decent trumpet. And he was ready, I would say, right there to train. He could have, had I had the readiness and willingness, he would have trained me how to be a trumpet player right there. But it took a long time to kind of, if you go at it as I was not I don't know, what would you call it? Like, as a painter, as a sculptor, as a filmmaker, I didn't understand like what it meant to practice 3 hours a day to become a trumpet player. And that was a big part of the battle, so that kind of thing.
Wow, I didn't know that. I mean, I, I, it, it's quite late to be 19 to start, but then yeah, you made like a huge
Well,
record. I mean,
I
that's
mean, if you
incredible.
do it, look, that's if you, I mean, I think it's kind of an interest, if you give yourself some time, if you give yourself 10
Oh
years, you
yeah,
could be
yeah,
a decent trumpet player, but it
yeah,
takes about 10 years. I remember that was like a shock. I remember saying to Brad, I was like, I guess I was 19. I think I was like, how long is it going to take? He was like, 10 years. And I was like, no, it's not going to take 10 years. I was like, look, I'm like, I have some talent. He was like, no. He was like, the only thing that you have going for you is you're really serious. And so I was like, yeah, okay. He was right. 10 years.
yeah. Well, interesting. And how did then I mean, I've checked my records with you. I think I have like 30 CDs by you, or various groups, or 20. Everyone, and then you immediately started connecting with like the earliest I have you on it. I think is stuff by Jason and Jason Adesievich and Aram Shelton and all these guys. And
Oh yeah.
how did you become part of the scene then and connecting with these guys? How did you meet?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I met I'm in the late 90s. Well, in the early 90s, I kind of, right when I had started, I met a bunch of people who like kind of younger players who kind of scared the shit out of me how good they were, and I realized I'd have to actually learn how to play. Like I met Chad Taylor, and
Mm,
Chad's such an open-minded guy. Chad loves, or at least at the time, he just loves like, or things that are surprising, and I didn't know how
yeah.
to play, so you play things that are surprising. So I think, so he dragged me around to a couple of different things, and I met Jeff Parker and kind of some of the Tortoise guys,
Mm,
and it was kind of an amazing time in Chicago, but I realized I really had to I needed to do a lot of work. So I kind of hid out for some time studying. And then when I was kind of ready, came back a little, maybe 98, 99 or something, I met, I was working at Jazz Record Mart, which is like like kind of this huge jazz emporium, in Chicago. And I met some guys who were working there, and there were a lot of people who were kind of coming through there. Then Keith Jackson worked there,
okay.
Jason Shevitz worked there, Frank Rosalie worked there. Like there was this huge crew of guys, and we kind of came up at that record store, playing together, hanging
Interesting.
out. And before then, there was a lot of different stuff happening at that time. There was a lot of overlap of indie rock and uh, free jazz and jazz. I mean, Aram and I were in a, kind of an indie rock band. For my first
Mhm.
tour with Aram was like 2001, but I lived with, I lived with Jason Adeshevitz in, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. So it was like the beginning of all of that.
Mm. How was because you're kind of, I've spoken, I think, to so many guys of the Chicago scene. I love the music that's been going on there. It's totally different than New York, let's say.
Yeah.
And how was the connection between like you kind of as the second generation of this revival, which happened in the 90s, with the older cats? I mean, I know you later connected with Ken and all these guys, but like, how was the vibe
Yeah.
then for you guys?
Well, I mean, you know, it's interesting. I think like, the series that Mike Reed and I started together in 2001
Hmm.
was really in the wake of, the Empty Bottle scene that John Corbett and Ken Vandermark,
Okay.
started. So I think we were, I mean, they were an inspiration. I think also all of those things, the AACM, what Ken were doing, these like kind of self-made, like these situations that, musician created situations that kind of make it develop capacity for a different kind of scene. I mean,
Mm,
we're not connected to Europe the way Ken and John were. We didn't know those guys, and we were not. It felt like a bit of an island. So I think
mm,
um, those early kind of organizing collaborations were like as important as the music at the time. So I think the Hungry Brain, you know, Reed and I, Elastic Arts, which Dave Rempis was running, you know, and then there was another one that Ken was kind of, you know, working in a little later, but it, as you know, as the demise of the bottle scene kind of happened. But I mean, we met, I think we, you know, we kind of connected through trying to create concerts for each other.
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're on each other's CDs. But I see, you know, you're on Keith's projects or on Steve on yours and Jason and blah, blah, you know, you're.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think those guys, you know, it was interesting. I mean, it's like, you know, Shevitz was, Jason Adashevitz was composing a lot when I met him. So was Keith. I mean, Keith came with like, maybe he came in 2000 or 2001, I can't quite remember. But he came with like a stack of compositions, and I remember him calling like a really like a huge group, you know, like ready to go. And it really didn't, you're right, it didn't really sound like anything that anyone was doing on the scene. Because, you know, you just had a different set of goals. And so it was always interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. When did you start leading bands? I mean, the first one I have by you under your name is Old Idea, but when did you say like, okay, shit, I want to become a band leader? And how was that moment like for you, being, you know, self-taught, like in a way?
No, I mean,
what was the story with you?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I would say the first time I ever kind of thought about it was, look, I was trying to learn how to read. And, you know, as you're learning how to read, you know, it can take time to learn how to write, right? You got to have material. So, I mean, I would say the first compositions I think I wrote down were, I would say in 2002.
Already?
You know,
okay.
2003.
Wow, okay.
You know, I mean, like that were actual, you know, pieces, you know, and something like that. And I think it's good. This is funny. I haven't thought about it. It's been a while, but I will say this. You know, one of the last bottle festivals, I was invited by Ken to do a duo with the great Robert Barry. You know, he and I had played some duo. We had played a gig. Ob Bars came into town, and we were on a gig it was like Robert and Guillermo Gregorio and Ob and his band, Wilbert Toyota and like all those guys, the Dutch guys. And it was really great. And Robert and I got on really well, and we had done a couple of gigs. And maybe Ken saw it or John saw it, I can't quite remember. We definitely played a gig in one of John Corbett's classes. So we got invited for this festival. It was probably the biggest gig I'd ever had. And Robert was sick, so he couldn't do it. But I'd been playing a lot with Keith and Frank. And so I called John. I was like, look, I don't know what to tell you here, but like, can I bring my guys? You know, and you know, we hadn't really played out there. And it went really well. And it was like the first review I'd ever had. And then with that review, Delmark, you know, we were, you know, the guy who owned Delmark, Bob Kester, was like, you know, he was like kind of interested. Maybe you guys want to make a record. So it was a collective group, but it was like the first time I was like, let's chase a record, let's try to make something. And that was kind of the beginning. So I think that record came out in 2005. I probably led 5 or 6. I mean, this was like the reason it was kind of called Old Idea was, you know, I had probably 5 or 6 bands worth of music that never got recorded. This is a pattern. And so, but you know, that was the thing, is I, you know, made a bunch of music and then didn't record it. And then I would say Old Idea was recorded because, you know, Nori Tanaka, the great drummer, which is like, you know, kind of an noted term, you know, he recorded that record. Like he didn't just play on it. He's an amazing player, but he also, like, you know, we were in this, you know, Leroy Bach's home studio, and he set up, you know, he did this super intense,
Okay.
5 hour setup. It's beautiful, it was beautiful sound. I think it sounds great.
Yeah.
And he set it up and played on it, so it was and he was, because he couldn't get an artist visa, he was leaving the country. And so that was like the impetus, oh, we have to get this recorded because this band had been playing.
Interesting.
There you have it.
Was it easy for you in the beginning to, I mean, you basically played with your peers, right? More or less. So was it easy for you to be a band leader, or like how have you evolved also now if you look at, through this
Well, it gets
20
easier
years
over
period?
time. I don't know. I mean, I think at the time, I mean, that's like, it's hard, it's hard to start out. I think it
Yeah, sure, yeah.
it got easier. I would say the first, the first years of that, I mean, look, I'd only been in a few other people's stuff, and so you can learn a lot, like, Ken has led like literally hundreds of bands. So having been in his big, his projects,
Yeah.
and then I was lucky to be involved in Rob Mazurek's projects, you get to see these, like, these guys who've been doing it for a really long time, see how they work, what's important to them, how it is. I'd had enough experience that I knew kind of how I wanted it to be in rehearsal, but it takes some time to like get rid of the worries about, what is it going to be like? What is it going to sound like? How are you going to produce it? And I think I would say by 2009, it was a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because no one tells you, like I remember when I started band leading, like, no one tells you, like, okay, you go on the road, guys need single room hotels, and
Oh yeah, totally.
like you need to pay them fees for a recording. I was like, shit, I don't know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What do you
Well,
mean? Like,
no, it's an excellent point, and I think no one does tell you that. And I think that's like one of the, the marks of some of the, playing with friends.
Yeah.
It's a little easier, that like unprofessionalness, and yet I think there's downsides to it too that I'm sure people have commented on, that it's like, how do you get to, the, the expectation that it's going to be absolutely at this level, that, it's like, that everyone is working at the same thing and it feels serious. I mean, I think though, yeah, it's that curve, the curve of that is it's a serious one.
Oh, it's heavy, man. Yeah, it's not easy. Like,
No.
how did you write music? You said you started writing music in 2002, and there are beautiful tunes on that record. And since you didn't study music per se, like how did that work for you? Where did you get the ideas? And
Well, no, I mean, look, look, I studied a lot. I had a lot of help too. I mean, you know, I tried to learn how to play piano, and I'll be forever a crappy, piano player.
Yeah.
I took trumpet lessons from some, I mean, just fantastic classical players like, Bruce Briney at Western Illinois. I took uh, trumpet lessons from Tom Tallman here in Chicago, just outside Chicago. I mean, and I took Theory 1 4 times,
Okay.
I mean, like, just like going from, like, seriously, this is a step, this is a key signature, and then just taking it a bunch of times. If you really want to do it,
Yeah, you learn.
you
Sure.
can suffer, so eventually I started to get some ideas, and I think, kind of learning the piano, learning tunes, learning how to play tunes was like a life-changing situation, like Great American Songbook stuff. I love that music, and I love early traditional jazz too. So I think, like, those kind of learning the the basics of that stuff. And I think in 2000 I bought, yeah, that Steve Lacy Findings book, and I met Steve Lacy,
Oh,
and
really? Oh, wow.
that was like, yeah, it was like a kind of a life-changing experience as well. Like, it's not that those teachers that I'm talking about, like, really helped me kind of get foundation of the instrument. But I think listening, it was so inspiring to like read about Lacey talk about like getting to the bottom of the instrument and like what that meant to him. That you could, you could play one note for a really long time, let the fundamentals kind of guide everything. And I think even though I'd been playing already for almost 10 years, I think that really kind of started things over. I started to kind of, things come together too, I think, after you've been playing for a while, and I was ready for that material. And I think it started to make sense that you could make a music, like if you really, really loved Axel Dorner and you really, really Steve Lacy and you really loved Ruby Braff and Lee Morgan, like all of these people, you could put something together that was like, maybe something very different,
Definitely.
And that was I think that's kind of what happened was over time, your own shape kind of comes through.
Interesting. Yeah. You mentioned Ken before, and
Yeah.
and Rob Mazur, Ken, obviously Bill Dixon and all these monster composers and players. How did these connections with them happen and these calls by these people? How was it like to work with them?
I mean, just honestly, really fortunate. I mean, I feel like I was on the scene, here a lot, and I went to a lot of things, and I listened a lot. I think, I had known Ken around, but we were friends. We were friendly, but I would say the first time I worked with Ken was probably 2001.
Already?
Maybe.
Okay. Well,
He put together a big band that didn't record, that was kind of for the Jazz Fest. And he was already so busy, making all sorts of things. So it was very cool to like, he kind of included, Tim Daisy, I think if I'm getting these dates a little bit wrong, I apologize, but I think to Tim and to Ken, I don't know. But I feel like, Ken had just joined the band, his Vandermark 5, and I think Daisy was playing a lot with Jason Agemian, who was in Jamie Birch's band, Jason. And so he was in it, and so there were like some younger guys. I think Aram was in this band and Jeb was in it. So I mean, it's like there are a lot of different people. It was put together for some festival stuff. And I mean, just, it was kind of amazing to, kind of be a part of watching the thing come together. And look, with Rob, it was kind of the same thing. I think Rob was really interested in Jason Adashevitz, the vibraphone. Rob loves those kinds of overlapping chords and like ringing. And so he kind of put together a band it was kind of like, I think it was Agemian and Mike Reed, Jason Adashevitz, Matt Lux, those guys, that crew of people. And it was, and Nicole Mitchell and Jeff Parker. But I mean, a lot of different people were playing at different times, rehearsing a band that he was considering putting together for this concert in Millennium Park that later became Exploding Star Orchestra. It was kind of the first iteration of that. And he brought, Bill Dixon. So it was like kind of amazing to, to watch Bill, I mean, Matt Bowder was in that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But there were a ton of people in the band, so I apologize if I'm forgetting anybody. But no, it was, Rob was still in Chicago a lot, and and Ken was here too. So I think I was just lucky to be, around the scene with so many,
right place, right time. Yeah.
I would say exactly.
Yeah. What's the scene now in Chicago? If you we're talking about the 90s, which was crazy. Well, this Vandermark generation, kind of then early 2000s again, another kind of this boom. But how is it now for you? Like you're an experienced player now in the scene. Like what's happening now?
Well, I think that it's changed. It's changed a lot. I mean, I think there's been, ups and downs of it. I mean, there was, I would say let's say as the bottle stopped having free jazz, or just not the programming, the consistent programming, there was this moment where Ken and this guy Mitch Kokonig were booking the Hideout. Dave was at Elastic, and Reed and I were at the Hungry Brain, and we had this group together called Umbrella Music, and we had a festival running for years and years, and it was Wednesdays at the Hideout, Thursdays at Elastic, Sundays at the Brain. That was every week. There was, a lot. Yeah, so there was kind of a lot happening, and that wasn't even the only thing happening. Little series came up and would come and go, but those were pretty serious for a long time. There was some money from people were interested in partnering with us. There was a lot of stuff happening at the Chicago Cultural Center run by the Michael Orlov, who's now somewhere else, but this great organizer and booker. The Millennium Park had just kind of opened up. There was a ton of music. There were a lot of opportunities, and we were we were like volunteers putting stuff together. So it's not, that, if you're willing to do it, people will kind of, be interested in helping you, kind of make it happen. So tons of, literally hundreds of concerts, through those years. And then, Reed bought Constellation, and things changed at the Hungry Brain. And so I would say the festival that kind of ended, and Constellation is, this venue that feels like, it was the first time there was a place every weekend for free jazz. It is free jazz every weekend, but the possibility of you're not just, on the, this like weekday, like Wednesday night or Thursday night. And Dave Rempus's series lasted for a very long time. He only left, like last year, and that series continues. Someone else's, another group of people are leading it. I think Molly Jones, Ishmael Ali, Angel Bat Dawid, and Ben Zucker. There's a lot of young people coming in, doing a lot of different things. I would say, if there was something to, like, what's really changed, I would say the new music scene, like the scene of like pure new music, like composed improvisers who aren't as influenced by jazz. That a huge change in the last maybe 10 years. Margasak runs there's a series called this Frequency series on Sundays, where it's like early, a Constellation, where it's these composer new music groups, like the wake of like the international, contemporary ensemble, like that vibe, Wedding, etc., that kind of stuff. And I think that's had a huge effect. I think there's been a huge, I would say there's been a big, change in, at the international anthem crew of people, Jamie's band, even though I think that is a New York phenomenon. I think, a lot of those ideas kind of happened here. Micaiah McRaven, Jeff Parker, those, like all those guys on that label. And they're it feels like a combinatorial music. It's like it's free jazz and it's grooves, and it's like that thing has its own life as well. And I think there's a pretty serious straight ahead scene, which feels more prominent now. That wasn't always as obvious to me. And there's some there's some really amazing players here. But yeah, so I mean, our, like Reed and I series, even though he's doing so much more than, the series booking and everything, but for like our series, I feel like it goes, the ups and downs. It's like it feels like there's a whole group of new young people right now. It feels like there's a lot of young people, and maybe 3 or 4 years ago it felt like a little old guy to me, but now it feels a little bit more mixed.
Interesting. So there is still an influx of new players, younger players coming to Chicago, like improvised scene.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I like, a couple. I mean, very recently, I would say there's 10 young, very good folks.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. At least.
Yeah, but it will be interesting to see, like, 10 years from now, like we'll be talking about, and again, a new generation. I'm really curious.
Yeah.
It's like a interesting phenomenon when you look at this.
Agreed.
Joshua, just not to take too much of your time, but when was the first time you became a touring musician? When did you go to Europe the first time, actually?
First time in Europe, playing. you know, it's funny, you know, the first time I ever played in Europe was with there was a band called Him,
Hmm.
which was members of an indie rock band called June of 44. And the first time we did a like a 2-week tour of the former Yugoslavia.
Seriously?
I
Wow.
seriously, you're
I'm
Slovenian,
in
right?
Slovenia. Yeah. Where did you play?
I I couldn't tell. It was this beautiful place in Ljubljana, and
Okay.
I
Oh,
can't
Metelkova, probably. Metelkova.
probably
Yeah,
I
alternative
really
place.
can't
Yeah.
remember. Well, we were it was put together by I mean the tour I think was put together by these guys in Croatia in Šibenik.
Hmm.
And
Wow, interesting.
yeah. So I think,
Wow, man.
but you
Okay.
know, I'd never been to the. I mean, it was like this. You know, I mean, it was an amazing experience. And when am I going to be back in Mostar? You know, in Bosnia again?
Oh
I mean, it
man,
was.
exactly. Wow.
I mean, it
I
was
never
fun.
played in Mostar. I mean, wow.
No, I
Okay.
mean, it was. Look, I mean, look, it was like we were the first. You know, there were people that there were a lot of people there. The cops were that like the cops and the peacekeepers were there. It was like the first concert that
Wow.
been in Mostar where everyone was invited. It was crazy. And the Starry Most hadn't been rebuilt yet, so we were like we spent the night partying on this like wooden UN bridge with all these kids. It was completely insane. You know,
Wow.
but that was like my first tour
Crazy.
there. Yeah, and so like that was kind of unbelievable. And that band, you know, that band did a European, you know, some European touring, and so that
Really?
was like
Oh,
my first tour. But I would say the first jazz like free jazz tour was I think with Chicago Lucerne Exchange. So my first stuff was with Mark Winternetter and Frank Rosalie and Keith Jackson. In we toured in Switzerland, Germany.
okay.
Um, I can't remember where else we went that first tour, but I mean it was a big. Oh yeah, in Austria. It was like we were. I remember the first time we were like on a program in a real jazz. But it was like we're in the program. There's a picture of us. I imagine, you know. But no, I think that was probably 2005, five,
All right. Okay, quite early.
six.
Okay, interesting. Was the road like you imagined it would be? Like touring?
I didn't. I mean, the first tour, the first tour in Europe I did that not the Bosnian tour was not at all
That's
how
different. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, look, that tour was like, I think that was totally an indie rock tour. There were hotels and like hostels, but it was like each day was you get up at the crack of dawn, starve as we drive, 9 hours to the next place. Then they feed you. I mean, it was like
Yeah. Okay.
that was really intense. But I mean, whatever. I think, and then the Chicago Lucerne, those first tours. Yeah, I mean it was
That's
cool. I
fun,
mean,
right? Yeah.
look, we were really lucky. Mark Winterner, the Swiss tubist,
Hmm.
to be connected. If you're just an American band going over to Europe and you don't have a home base in
That's
Europe at
different. Yeah.
all, I mean that's a very different situation. I mean, we had Mark's apartment in Lucerne. So there were some gigs, let's say you have 4 gigs in, central Switzerland. You come back and maybe they're going to give you a hotel every night. You get
Yeah.
paid every night. And so I would say it was pretty cushy, some of it. And then also you play in I remember like the first time we played in maybe in Halle in Germany. I
Yeah.
mean at squat kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
play. And it was really well attended, and it was completely freezing and completely insane. And where they put us up, like I can't even, I think it was so cold. It was insane. So I mean, it was a bit like, you're like greatest night ever, kind of like, holy crap, like what are we gonna do? But no, lots of good times, not a ton of like, I mean, lots of fun stories, not a ton of like hellscape stories.
Yeah. 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 It's funny. You're younger, and then yeah, when you look back,
Being young,
interesting.
yeah, being young makes things a lot easier.
That makes it easier. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Yeah. What are your next plans of coming to Europe, by the way? I mean, do you have some upcoming tours, and what are your upcoming projects like for this
I
year?
mean, no, I'm really working right now on writing. I'm writing lots of little pieces that sound more like the Dance and a Hop material.
Well, okay.
I have so many like little tunes, and I'm trying to get them kind of out of my, like let's get them all out. And so I'm trying, and I have like a collection of, there's a gazillion of them, and trying to streamline that process and also try different ways of playing it. So like last week it was Keith and I and Michael Zarang, the great improviser drummer here. And so like no bass, no cello, no nothing, and like still trying to kind of, I'm really interested in sound, pure sound playing and free jazz like playing to get, all of it together, that kind of thing, kind of collage piece, what happened, so I'm trying to experiment with, I'm doing the same thing, I'm writing the same thing, what happens around it changing. And so trying to experiment with that. Jason Stein and I have a new quartet with these younger players, Jeremy Cunningham and Katie Ernst. Rebke and I have, we have maybe 10 new pieces that we're going to record for basically a duo record, even though I know we played together a lot, but it's really gotten quite developed, I think, over the past year. And have you heard, he did one of these things.
We did it like half a year ago, or something. By the way.
Amazing. So the work with Rebke continues. I don't know, I'm playing with all the regular, I'm playing with Josh Abrams and his amazing new, his new band, that's been going forever, Natural Information Society. I think we're playing at Victoriaville in a couple weeks. And so I'm enjoying a lot of the sideman playing still, which is great. And I'm just trying to honestly, I'm trying to just streamline the process. I think that's the part for me, is like, I love the writing part, I love the performing part, like the record, like getting the record together, and and like all like that second half of it. That could use some improvement.
No, come on.
But
no hurry.
But no, it's good.
You're busy, super. Well, what about Europe? Do you have some with some groups?
I'm making a plan. I definitely want to get back. I need to get back to Switzerland. Wintonair has some new family stuff going. I have to get back to see him and play. And no, there's a bunch of things. I'm trying to make plans for next year.
Super. Hope to catch you, man. If you're around, drop me a line. We have a guest room. Come hang.
Yeah, are you where are you?
I'm in Maribor, which is like 30 minutes south of Graz. So
sure.
So it's like kind of this between Ljubljana and Graz, so, wine region. That's why.
No, that sounds fantastic. No, this is good.
It's evening here, so I can do that. So.
I listened to the Dolphy thing. It sounds just lovely.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. I had to do something during COVID, so
it was cool. I always love to hear the song "The Prophet."
Oh yeah,
it was like really.
Yeah, it was tough because like solo guitar heritage is so huge, man. So I just didn't want to do the Joe Pass, Ben Munder, whoever. So I was like, shit, I'll play single lines also, and I was like, okay, that's easier.
It's very effective.
Yeah, otherwise it's just like, man, I don't know. I mean, I love it, but it's too much. I'd rather do some other way. But thanks for checking it out. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for bringing.
Josh, thanks again for sharing some of these thoughts and everything. So beautiful to hear you talk. Now I have more picture now. When I put on a CD, I'll be like, oh shit, okay.
Thanks for inviting. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Drop me a line if you're in Europe, okay?